Welcome back then folks to the second build of day 4 already. We are quickly moving towards the end of the week in Special Projects pack number 12. This is one which I saw a bit of love for in terms of people looking forward to building it. A Camaro Rally Car is not the most obvious thing in the world, and I got the impression that some people might have not recognised this car. I'm sure one or two of you did from the livery, but this is actually kind of a replica, but it's a replica from another game. This is a Dirt Rally 2.0 featured vehicle, the Camaro GT4R, and there are a couple of different GT4R rally cars. Of course, I've done some before, like the 911R GT. I did the Alpine in that lovely Canadian-themed livery. This one, though, and another one which I've got planned in future for the Mustang, are directly taken from Dirt Rally 2.0, so we are following those specs. Also, I will say, you know, aside from grabbing the player's livery, which is a great looking one, I'm sure more than one person has done it, but this is the one I've opted for. This was a weird car in terms of building it, because it didn't respond in the way I thought it would to tuning. Because, yeah, it's a big, you know, pony car, muscle car, whatever you want to call it, but still fundamentally, especially rally builds, I don't personally find, and you would think as somebody who builds so many of them, like I do, you'd think I'd pretty much have all of my expectations down for what a car's going to be like. This didn't really live up to any of them. It was such a weird car in terms of how it responds to tuning, and I've had a couple of those pop up in Special Projects. Maybe it's because of physics changes in the game, I don't really know. As far as the build though, it's actually quite simple. Now of course it's based on the ZL1 1LE Camaro in particular, so that's the one that you'll need to use. As far as the build, you want your stage 1 weight. Like I said, incidentally, we are using Dirt as the spec reference for horsepower and for weight. So stage 1 weight. Of course, you've got your sports mediums anyway, but we won't be needing those. For the club sports section, stage 2 weight, the power restrictor, the ballast, and of course dirt tyres in my case. Depends if you want to take it on the snow, of course you'll need that. I just want to jump into the ultimate section. In fact, yeah, save you some time, stage 5 weight, so you can bypass all the rest. It's always a good reason to watch these videos before actually clicking on anything, save wasting some money. As far as the semi-racing stuff, the fully customised computer, one of the very few things that I actually have done, and the only reason for that, because of course this is running way less power than the car has as standard, is because of that exact reason. There's no point in adding loads and loads of stuff just for the sake of then restricting it, so I fitted that ECU because it's a really clean, efficient way of reducing the horsepower rather than using just the restrictor. So moving down here, we've got the diff, the fully customised manual box. The point level, of course, with that is slightly lower than the full race transmission and also has a bit more of a rally car vibe. I have increased the rigidity on this one. Stage 3 weight, of course, comes with the stage 5 naturally. As far as the racing stuff, there is not much fitted there in terms of power, or nothing really. And then for the brakes, you could go for the drilled or the slotted. I guess you could go for ceramics if you wanted to. Overkill doesn't really make any difference, but if you want to have it for the visuals, I guess. The racing pads, race suspension, clutch and flywheel. Of course, again, the stage 4 is covered by the stage 5 weight, and naturally the hydraulic handbrake and the steering angle adapter for the extra manoeuvrability, and finally for the ultimate section, just the weight. So it's actually not that expensive as far as the build goes. I mean, I say that, the stage 5 weight is probably the most expensive aspect of it, which is utterly ridiculous. There's no real reason for the weight loss to be that expensive. It's such a steep change, especially when, if you look at it, stage 1 makes more of a difference than anything in any Gran Turismo game, and it's always the cheapest one. It's kind of wild. Now, in terms of the build, as you can see, it's 575 points, which is quite modest for a vehicle with that kind of torque and horsepower. In Dirt 2.0, it's got 460 horses, and it weighs 1450 kilos. And of course, the Mustang is slightly different, as you'll see in future. So we're not quite on 460, but like I said, I didn't want to end up fitting this and removing that and restricting it all up and down all over the place just for the sake of that 2 horsepower. So it's more than close enough, unless you have OCD, of course, which some of us do. But for me, at least, that's close enough to be accurate. As far as the suspension, we've got 120mm, 4 on the anti-roll, 20 and 30 for the dampers, which is super low. Seems to be a bit of a theme in this particular Special Projects, which does make me wonder, have the recent updates changed the physics a bit? Because this is something which I haven't been doing really before. As far as the springs, those are very high. Well, I say very high, they're actually not crazy, 3.15. As far as the camber, we've got 3, front and rear. Interestingly, for a rally car, no toe. And toe was one of the things which I really had to dial in on this one, because I did what I would usually do, and it made it very weird in terms of how it responded. It was too tail happy, too much of a drift car. And you'll see in a second when it comes to the weight distribution, you may have already noticed the weight distribution looks very strange on this car. It's got more over the back by a significant margin, which a Camaro would never usually have. As far as the diff, I've opted for 10, 30 and 20. Tried a few different ones, that's what I ended up settling in on. For the transmission, fairly close ratios, 270 kilometers an hour. Initially I had it even closer than that, about 250. That was too short. It was constantly changing up and down all the time. And the great thing about this car is it's got so much torque that you don't really need to be jumping around through the gears. You can let the gear kind of run its course. That kind of horsepower, that kind of torque kind of does the work for you. As far as the power restrictor and the ECU, first of all, you want 95% on the restrictor, 70% on the ECU. And then for the weight, you want to add quite a lot. 169 kilos, and then I've put that all the way to the back. Now that does not necessarily match Dirt Rally, or any real-world Camaro for that matter, I would imagine. The reason why I've done that, though, is because initially I planned to have it more like a traditional, 50-50 or a 51-49. It handles, though, so weirdly with that distribution that I had to counteract that somehow, and one of the best ways I found to do that, in addition to changing around the suspension and the diff, was actually just to dump all the weight on the back end. And it's made a lot better through corners. On paper, it makes it look like a Chevy 911, but in practice, it works. So, if it works, who cares if it's stupid? Kind of like a Chaparral 2J. If it looks dumb, but it works, then hey. As far as the rest, you can see everything which we fitted, which was, like I said, pretty simple. And then all that remains is naturally to jump out on the dirt and show you what it can do. Now, for those of you who were really looking forward to this one, for obvious reasons, a Camaro rally car sounds pretty cool, and I do personally love the look of it from dirt, but in terms of using it, my biggest piece of advice for this particular one is actually quite simple. Don't showboat. Because of how this car performs, even with the build, you'll probably notice it handles a bit weirdly compared to some others, and if you want to try, moving the ballast and see the difference that I'm talking about, then by all means go for it. But what I mean by don't showboat is very simple. Mostly with the rally cars, it's fun to look good, to throw the tail out, have some fun slip sliding through the corners and looking good in a replay. This car doesn't like doing that. It does not want to mess around. It's a point and shoot rally car. So try to take the racing line as if you were on the tarmac, and you'll find it's a lot better, a lot quicker. And that pretty much always goes for any rally car, but there are some that you can get away with it on. This is not one of them. This car does not want to mess around. It doesn't want to showboat. It doesn't want to show off. It just wants to win. It wants to get on with it, go in a straight line as much as possible. It's a very stereotypically American thing, but it really is the case here. So if you use it that way, it will be very rewarding, and it is definitely a quick car. The only downside is it's a Camaro, so it's huge by rally car standards, and it definitely takes up a lot of the road, and you can feel that through the tight stuff, but the weight being over the back end means it doesn't spin around too much in terms of, shredding the tyres. It's got a nice grounding weight, especially when the weight balance shifts to the rear under acceleration. Ultimately, it's not difficult to drive, it's just kind of different. You have to realign your expectations a little bit. But if you do decide to use it, I hope, of course, you enjoy it. Not too many more builds, only 2 more this week, of course, tomorrow, and naturally check out the others, which I've already done this week. But that's it for this special project. I'll see you next time with more, and for now, thanks for watching.